與港珠澳大橋。
This is the Subcommittee on Subsidiary Legislation relating to the commissioning of the Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, Hong Kong Port. We have a quorum, and this is the appointed time. I call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda: election of chairman. The election of chairman of this subcommittee. Please refer to the election procedure in the appendix of the House Committee. Now I ask for nomination. A valid nomination will have to be made by one member orally and seconded by another member orally. The nomination will have to be accepted by the one nominated. Mr. Lo Wai-Kok, I nominate Mr. Holden Chow. Any seconders? Seconded by Mr. Yu Si-wing. Mr. Chow, do you accept? Yes, I do. Any other nominations? I'll count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No other nominations. Mr. Holden Chow, please come forward to chair the meeting.
Hi, 各位委員好，咁就唔該晒大家。另外咧就都問一問大家嘅，就大家認為我哋呢一
Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask you, do you think we need to elect a deputy chairman? No need? Well, if that is the case, we don't need a deputy chairman. Next item on the agenda. We can ask government officials to come in.
唔該。就喺呢度。好啊 ，OK， 唔該晒。咁即係我哋而家俾大家察悉個時間表先。咁即係如果係向內，咁都好趕。咁我要讀一讀呢個出嚟。係咪？OK， 好。咁但係呢個咧，呢個又點？如果你咁講嘅時候，但係我係咪？好，咁即係就政府嘅官員代表。
We have the administration representatives here with us. And I'd like to say to you before we start our timetable. According to current procedures, well, deadline for giving notice of amendment is the 1st of November. If that is the case, then we have to make a report to the House Committee on the 27th of October. That is this Friday. So if we finish our meeting today, then we will have to make a report this Friday. The expiry date of the scrutiny period is the 8th of November. If you would like to extend the scrutiny period to the 29th, then the deadline for giving notice of amendment will be 22nd of November, and the date of reporting to the House Committee will be 17th of November. So if we extend the scrutiny period, we will have more time. I ask members to note this. you need to decide whether to extend the scrutiny period. And I think it depends on our progress today. It's impossible. How can we complete this today? Well, if you all share the same view, then we think there is a need to extend the period. Let me repeat. The expiry date of the extended scrutiny period will be the 29th of November 2017. Shall we start? I now ask the administration to present the subsidiary legislation before we hear questions from members. Thank you. First of all, in relation to the 4 subsidiary pieces of subsidiary legislation, I'm going to give you some background information. Well, in order to make sure that the commissioning of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, we will have to make sure that all the technical details will be put in place. So we will need to designate certain closed areas and set up detention quarters of the immigration quarter. As a result, on the 26th of September, the administration submitted the 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation. Some of them are related to closed areas. Well, according to the police, closed areas are usually hotbed of criminal engaging in illegal activities. So we need to adopt same practice as other land boundary control points and designate the area as closed areas. So under the immigration ordinance, section 36(1), we will designate certain areas near the Hong Kong port as closed areas. That will be the closed area, Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, Hong Kong port, and Hong Kong Link Road order. And the commissioner for police will issue a notice of access, that is to give a general permission of passengers and drivers into the closed area so that they don't have to apply for closed area permit every single time. There are also 2 pieces of subsidiary legislation, that is to designate detention quarters for the immigration department for immigration control and law enforcement. This is under the Immigration Ordinance 35(1) as well as the 13A(9) of the Immigration Service Ordinance. So that will be in relation to the Immigration Places of Detention Amendment Order 2017 and the Immigration Service Designated Places Amendment Order 2017. We have had similar amendments to the subsidiary legislation in relation to the Shenzhen Bay Port, Hong Kong Port Area Ordinance. We follow this existing policy. But that is all for my presentation, and I thank members for giving us the opportunity to be here to present to you the 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation. We will give you detailed explanations when necessary. We can now open the floor for members to ask questions. First, round 4 minutes for each member. Question and answers included, of course. We will have the second round. First round is 4 minutes. Let's see if members would like to ask questions. First, Mr. Wu Chi-Wai. Well, I see that there are no other members who would like to ask questions, so I'll be the first. Well, this is just to change the law in accordance with the change in situation. I know that you will have an idea about the legislative amendment. in relation to the actual traffic condition in the future and transportation layout or traffic situation. I've been asking questions about this project. That is, any assessment on the change of traffic flow because of the shift of manufacturing industry towards the west. And on top of that, there are a number of bridges being constructed. There is the Shenzhong Bridge to be commissioned in 2022. So any information that you can provide us? So we want to know whether we need to make sure that all the improvements are in place. First of all, whether we have taken into account traffic flow. These 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation are to enact technical subsidiary legislations relating to the operation of the Hong Kong port. We have to make sure that law and order will be maintained and that clearance will be conducted without any problem. We take into account a number of major principles. That is, the designation of closed areas will be for clearance, so that immigration and customs clearance will not be affected. And the areas after passengers and vehicles have passed immigration control and customs clearance will have to be designated as closed areas. So will be the passenger clearance building. So no matter what the traffic flow is, these areas will have to be designated as closed areas. So the actual traffic flow may not be the major consideration of these 4 sublegs. They are mainly for enforcement needs. You ask about traffic flow. The Security Bureau has spoken to the Transport and Housing Bureau. Well, we see that the vehicle flow will range between 92,000 and 9,200 and 14,000, whereas passenger flow will be around 55,850 to 69,200. Well, this will be the information I have received. If you need further information, I will forward them to you. Next, Mr. U.C. Wing. Well, you have already said that there are already established practices in relation to designation of closed areas. Well, but what about the area itself, the size? Are there any other principles you have taken into account or you have adopted established practice? If passenger flow exceeds your original estimate and that the size of the closed area will have to be changed, are there any mechanisms in place for you to deal with that?
And thirdly, I can see from the document that you are considering the permit for going into the closed area and the exemption for that. Now, whether a vehicle needs to apply for the permit, is it dealt with by another legislation, please? Thank you very much for the question. Thank you, Chair. As I've mentioned, the closed area the principle for demarcating that is according to the need of the relevant port itself, the configuration, the design, the roads leading to the port, etc. And for this particular Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge Hong Kong port, it will depend on the areas that we designate for customs, immigration and quarantine, and the areas after these checkpoints, and also the roadways leading to customs and immigration. So these one-way roads leading to these checkpoints, yes, these will be closed areas. Now, for the immigration area, yes, that would be demarcated as closed area, as also the vehicle checkpoints as well, and also the Hong Kong Link roadway linking up to the bridge itself will also be demarcated or delineated as closed area. So that's always been the practice, actually. Now, as to Mr. Yu's question as to whether the closed area would be extended or contracted because of traffic situation. Well, in the future, if indeed the passenger vehicle flow is such that it is so heavy that we may need to consider more areas for effecting customs, immigration and quarantine, or we need more road service for so doing, we may look at the actual situation and we may adjust the areas demarcated as closed area. So the existing delineation is as we can foresee along existing enforcement practice. And when there needs to be changes, we will also go through a subsidiary legislation. So that should not be a problem in terms of mechanism. Now, as for the permits going into the closed areas, it is passenger, cross-border passenger or cross-border drivers and not vehicles. Basically, the transport department will be handling the permits. Anything else, Mr. Yu? Yes, I'm relatively clear. Thank you for the answers. The next question comes from myself. I have heard you saying, the administration, that per day the traffic flow is 9,500 vehicles per day. I don't know whether I have noted down the wrong number. I just want to be clear about the number. And another question, taking this opportunity, perhaps the public would want to know, can you please just succinctly describe, after the closed area had been delineated, what exactly is your power within the closed area and outside the area, please, in terms of enforcement, etc. Perhaps the public is not so much in the know. How does the closed area differ in terms of your powers and enforcement? The third question concerning from within the closed area, for the deployment of your officers and staff in the departments, or from the different departments, do you already have a number? I'm sure in the closed area there will have to be customs and immigration staff. Do you already have some figures concerning the staff deployment in the closed area, please? Thank you, Chair, for the questions. First of all, concerning the what the public need to note about the closed area. Well, simply put, in the beginning, as I was presenting the paper, this closed area is not something new. In fact, for all our boundary checkpoints, they are managed along the same lines. So if any citizen wants to know the functioning and the operation of the closed area, well, they can refer to the Long Ma Chau or Shuttlecock, etc. It is basically the same. And secondly, this particular closed area, if you do not have the closed area permit issued by the Commissioner of Police, or if you're not a cross-border driver or passenger, you cannot stay in the closed area. If you do, the police will have the power to prosecute you. So that's the first point. As to the third question about the staffing, yes, indeed, as the chair had mentioned, when we set up this port, whether it is customs or immigration, they will need to carry out their work. And of course, there will have to be staffing, extra staffing in this port. In 2017-18 financial year, we have already provided resources to the customs and immigration departments, and each department, basically, we will provide 300 places in terms of staffing. We take into account the other land checkpoints and also the mode of operation and the hours of operation of the bridge itself. And as it commissions service, the bridge, we will look at the actual situation to see whether we need to add more hands. And further, once commissioned, we will also closely monitor the number of vehicles to see whether we need to add to the staffing. One follow-up question. You mentioned there is, for each of the departments, an additional 300 headcounts to man this closed area. And the other clarification I wanted to seek is 9,500 vehicles per day. Is that the figure? Yes. And what about passengers, please? Now, as for the estimate figures, Chair, this is from the 2008 feasibility study that the Transport Department had given us the projected numbers. The vehicle flow is 9,200 to 14,000 for vehicular flow, and for passengers it is 55,000 to 69,000. Now, we will, of course, look at the actual situation after commissioning, and we will do another round of estimation. Our baseline is that the port will have to function smoothly. Any other questions, members? Yes, Mr. Yu, second round. Thank you, Chair. Concerning the detention place. Now, with this kind of heavy traffic, the place of detention, may I ask how big will it be in order to be big enough, and what departments will be involved in this place of detention, please? And if there are other departments which will want to use a place of detention, will they be allowed to, or is it just the security-related departments? Now, concerning the detention place, this is mainly for use of immigration department. The reason why we set this up in the port is because the place of detention will deal with immigration and port-related matters, and most of the matters would be cases involving immigration. For example, people without valid travel documents, they cannot come into our territory, for instance. Basically, that's the use of the places of detention. Now, as to whether it is sufficient vis-a-vis the traffic flow, etc., well, we will look at the actual situation depending on the actual operation of the ports, and with consideration of the figures from other ports. Now, this is for repatriation or disallowing of entering our territory. These will be the cases that we foresee will be dealt with by the places of detention. I think these are the main usages of the places of detention. Mr. Chair, Chair, apart from immigration use and What about the other departments, such as the ICAC? Let's say if there is a case, or the police department, can they not use these places of detention? Yes, indeed. The places of detention are designated for use by the immigration department. If the police need to use the places of detention, they will have to use their own detention areas. This place of detention, as enshrined in this amendment order, is designated for use by the immigration department or the immigration service. And what if there are persons who apply for repatriation or entrance into the territory? Mr. Tai will answer that question as to how these cases will be dealt with. And I'm talking about non-refoulement claims. Thank you very much, Mr. Yu, for your question. For every traveler coming into our port, we will have immigration services questioning. If we find that a traveler does not qualify for coming into our territory, we will, as early as possible, arrange for the traveler to leave the territory, and the relevant ports will repatriate this traveler. And if it is the airport that the traveler is in, then the person will be repatriated onto the plane. And if there is a non-refoulement claim, we have dedicated staff to deal with these cases at the port, or where necessary in the other places of detention. We will continue to handle these claims. Now, in that case, these places of detention, can they be used in such situations? Yes, as mentioned, this is under immigration services use. Yes, indeed, the claims can be handled in these places of detention. Yes, Chan Shuk-chong, right. I would like to know, I do not know whether I've missed out in the paper concerning detention places. How big are they in total? How big in terms of area, please? Well, the design area on the first floor is about 1,100 square feet. How many rooms? The design is 10 rooms. 10 rooms. How many people can be detained? Male and female segregated, 10 persons in total, approximately. Now, Mr. Yu asked a question just now, and I would like to follow up. And this is basically detention places reserved for immigration cases. The other law enforcement departments, do they set up their own places of detention, or do they just summarily deal with their relevant cases? There's a lot I do not know, I have to say. Perhaps this is the first question. That is, the other law enforcement departments, do they individually set up their detention places or centers, or do they have other orders? Right. At the administration? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Chan, for the question. Now, basically, we are dealing with the immigration places of detention today. As for the other ports, in the operation of the ports, the immigration within the port area will set up their place of detention. That is a normal practice. As for the other departments, such as police and others, would they also need to detain suspects or criminals? Well, Ms. Chan is correct in the sense that the preference is not to detain them at the boundary, but to repatriate them or to handle the cases as appropriate. Mr. Cheng from the police would perhaps answer that question more thoroughly. Thank you very much, Ms. Chan, for the question. As for the police, if there is need for detention, according to the police ordinance, the person will be brought to the nearby police station, and that would be Lantau North Police Station, which is nearby. By car, I would say about 5 to 10 minutes. A follow-up question.
It's not that I try to take the chance. Just I have a question to ask you. There was an MP from the UK, Benedict Rogers, was refused entry, and I think it has evolved into a diplomatic matter. So if he were to be detained, under which legislation would he be detained? Because immigration ordinance is within Hong Kong internal affairs. However, if it's now a foreign affairs, and people are refused entry, then can they be detained in detention quarters under the immigration ordinance, or would you have to find another way to deal with them? I understand the reason why Benedict Rogers was refused. According to the central authorities, it was a foreign affairs matter. So if someone is refused entry for the same reason, then can they be detained in detention quarters under the immigration ordinance? Can you answer me? Thank you for the question. For immigration control of Hong Kong, it's the responsibility of the Hong Kong SAR government. So immigration control of everyone is under the purview of the immigration department. And if the immigration department sees a need to ask questions or make inquiries, everything will be done in accordance with the immigration ordinance. That is, if necessary, the detention facilities will be used. I have a supplementary question to ask. This is my second round. You talked about 300 more people increase in manpower. According to information given to us, every day there will be about 9,200 to 14,000 vehicular trips, and 55,000 to 69,000 passenger trips. Well, it may not reach this figure at the start. It may start low and then rise to this. So 300 additional people compared to 55,000 passenger trips. How does it compare to other land control points? Say, for example, Shenzhen Bay Port. Do you know what is the passenger flow going through Shenzhen Bay Port and the manpower level there? I'll just give you a rough answer, and then I will defer to Mr. Tai to give you details. When we conduct manpower planning, we consider vehicular traffic as well as a passenger flow. On top of that, we consider a number of other factors. The specific port, the Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, is vast in area compared to Shuttlecock or Shenzhen Bay. In addition, there is also the operating hours. Different boundary control points may have different operating hours. So we take a comprehensive view. So the area is different and the operating hours are different. So I can't give you a simple comparison of the manpower level and its proportion. And in 2017-18, we have given them that level of manpower. We will conduct another assessment just before commissioning for the same reason. For actual operation details, I will defer to Mr. Tai. Just now, you mentioned about comparison with other control points. Shenzhen Bay, on average, we deal with about 100,000 passenger trips per day. For vehicular trips, about 1,200. That's only a ballpark figure. And we have a strength of about 300 or so. Well, if the passenger trip is 55,000 and vehicular trip 9,000, then we have a strength of about 300. It will be sufficient to deal with demand at the start. The Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, when is the estimated commissioning date? Sorry, I wasn't clear. Is it round-the-clock operation or what? Plans of the Security Bureau or Discipline Services are based on the 24 round-the-clock operation. So if there is a need of operation round the clock, we will have sufficient manpower. Well, the bridge has not been commissioned yet, so we will have to wait for decisions from ministries and commissions for the actual operating hours. So far you can't decide whether it is going to be round-the-clock operation. As I said, we will have to wait for agreement of the three governments. Understand. Next. Anyone else who would like to ask questions? We don't have questions to ask. We'll have to start clause by clause. You don't really have any questions to ask, then we go into clause by clause. Now is clause by clause. The first is the Immigration Places of Detention Amendment Order 2017. Thank you. That is the Immigration Places of Detention Amendment Order 2017. This is quite simple. That is the Secretary for Secretary for Security made this amendment under the Immigration Places of Detention Ordinance, and this will come into effect by notice published in the Gazette. That is, it will come into effect on the same day as the commissioning of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge. 3 is to amend Cap 115 subsidiary legislation B, which says that which designates places of detention. So 3 amends Schedule 3 to add detention quarters at the Hong Kong port of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge. I have a question. That is to add to Schedule 3, that is to designate detention quarters for immigration service to use. I have heard from members about the explanation. Well, that is for the use of the Immigration Department. If it's other discipline services, shouldn't there be a similar clause? Say, for example, for the enforcement of police matters? Because you have made it very clear here that it is for immigration matters only. So if it's for other discipline services, there will be an addition of a similar paragraph. Is that right? If other discipline services find it necessary to use it, as I said that, and as Mr. Jia explained, police would detain persons in a police station. And if there is indeed a need, they would not use 115 or 331, that is the Immigration Ordinance or the Immigration Service Ordinance. Because the Immigration Service Ordinance only empowers the Immigration Department to detain people. So these detention facilities is for the use of the Immigration Department only. And if the police need to use it, then they will have to invoke their own legislation to deal with it. Under the police ordinance, it's made clear that, well, if in case of arrest and if there is a need for detention, the person will have to be brought to the nearest police station. There is no designated places, so there is no need to change the law. I have a question to ask. Customs and excise. Any appropriate arrangements in place? I may not be right. Well, customs and excise would need to enforce the law as well. Are there detention places for the CNE department, as far as you know? Well, discipline services or departments with power of detention will have empowering provisions. Say, for example, the police, there will be a provision saying that detentions can be done in police stations. Customs and excise is the same, that they may detain people in CNE offices. May I ask another question? That means a CNE will have their offices to detain people, places of detention. The police has already said that it will be the North Lantau police station. So as far as you know, the CNE department, do they have an area at the boundary control point to be used as offices? I understand that it will be similar to other boundary control points, say for example the airport or land boundary control points. And as to places to make inquiries, they will use the established procedure which is allowed by the law. So in relation to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, there won't be any problems. Well, a police will have their own places of detention, and the immigration is dealt with by this. And the CNE, I don't know whether they would need to make a similar amendment. I don't know whether there will be one. They already have the power under the law. Any other questions from members? If not, we will continue. We can now go to LN 161. That is Immigration Service Designated Places Amendment Order 2017. Perhaps I will defer to the administration to go through that with us. This is in relation to the Immigration Service Designated Places Amendment Order 2017. It's similar to the previous one. It's to designate a new detention facilities for the use of the Immigration Department. So the provisions are similar.
Okay.
And again, this is an amendment order made by the Secretaries for Security under Section 13A bracket 9 of the Immigration Service Ordinance, and the commencement date, as with the previous amendment, is also coming into operation on the day to be appointed by the Secretary for Security by notice published in the Gazette, which will also be the same day that the bridge comes into operation. And the order to be amended is Cap 331, Subsidiary Legislation B, and the amendment is set out in Section 3. And in Section 3, the schedule is amended to add number 16, the area within the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, Hong Kong Port, that is set aside as detention quarters for use by the Immigration Department, which is exactly the same as the amendment we saw just now. Any questions? Members? None? Next. 162. And that is the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, Hong Kong Port, and Hong Kong Link Road closed area permission to enter notice. Thank you very much. So this is about the closed area, Link Road closed area notice. As mentioned, this is one of the subsidiary legislations. Basically, it is to demarcate an area as closed area, and for the link between the bridge and the Hong Kong port. And the first item is commencement date. Again, this is the gazetted date of the Gazette date, which is also the commencement date of the bridge, and this is made by the Chief Executive under Section 36 bracket 1 of the Public Order Ordinance, Cap 245. Now, because this is more technical in nature in terms of the amendment, Chair, if I may just provide some information by way of background. Now, if I may just repeat myself in saying that for the closed area, as mentioned, the Hong Kong port area, where there is immigration controls or custom controls, this area will be delineated as a closed area. And secondly, after leaving this area, the link road, meaning the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, Hong Kong Link Road, will be delineated as well, because this is an area one will pass through after clearing customs. And also there are roads leading to the customs clearance spots, and these roads only lead to customs clearance, and they are one way only. And so these roads will also be, according to usual practice, be demarcated as closed area. So that is the concept. As for this bridge, it is particular in the sense that we have a 3D concept in delineating the closed areas. This is not unprecedented. The Shenzhen Bay port is also delineated as such. Why do we use this so-called 3D concept? Because there are two reasons. First of all, the bridge itself, the sea area, it is of course sea underneath the bridge, and there will be boats passing by, and we do not want to catch the boats as well unintentionally. And also the link roads, they are crisscrossing each other leading to the area, and there are some overhead roadways and some ground level roadways, and some of them will be demarcated as closed areas, some not, and therefore we need a 3D concept to be clear as to what are closed areas. And we will have very clear signs for the drivers so that they know clearly what is the closed area and what is not within the closed area. So that is a concept. As for the 2D demarcation, we have explained that just now. As for the 3D, that is with the spatial, the height, in this regard, again, we follow the Shenzhen Bay example, and that is the highest point of a building will be the maximum height of the demarcation of closed area. As I have mentioned, this is with regard to the bridge and the Hong Kong Link Road, and we would include this kind of height as well, spatial height. So standing in the port, wherever he's standing, it would also include the spatial height as well, so that no one can get into this closed area without sanctions. Now, it is close to the airport as well, mind you, and so if we use the bridge as the cap of height, then we will not be able to take care of areas which is close to the international airport, because the airport will have planes taking off and landing, as we do not want to catch or include the boats inadvertently passing under the bridge. We do not certainly want to include the planes passing by overhead as well. And so we use the plus 80 mpd as a measuring unit. That is the height limit upwards, or the Civil Aviation Department's promulgation of the cap height of the building, whichever is lower. By so doing, we will not be including the planes, but at the same time, we'll be including all the buildings. So that is slightly technical. Yes, indeed, it is technical. Yes, I've been following you very carefully, but it is complicated. And so my understanding is that it is near to the airport, and therefore you have further considerations. Indeed, Chair, this is exactly the Shenzhen Bay concept. The highest point, or the highest point of a building, that is the point, and that is the column of the supporting the bridge. But we fear that we may be catching inadvertently some of the planes, and therefore I'm using the civil aviation highest height promulgated. So we do not include the planes. So if a person goes into the area, unless a person is dangling in midair, but if the person is walking normally into the closed area, then there is no confusion as to the vertical height or the vertical. It should be quite clear. Chen Shuk-chong. Mr. Chair, I think I can picture this in my mind. I'm thinking James Bond, actually. And, on top there is helicopters, and then underneath there is water skiing, and in between there is a bridge. Now, just in case, let's say, because the bridge has a certain thickness to it, and is it the bridge service on top, or is it the bottom service of the bridge, please? Because people can have different ways of getting into the territory. For example, the person can attach himself to the bottom of a vehicle, for instance. So, Chair, yes, perhaps we need another meeting, indeed, to go through this clause by clause. But I would think slides would really help. If we have a visual, that would really help. 3D diagrams, even if it's 2D diagram, but if you have a cross-section diagram, it will be so much clearer. So I'm asking, is it the surface of the bridge or underbelly of the bridge, and also the distance from the water? I would like to know the distance in between. When I say bridge, it includes the surface, the top surface of the bridge. Yes, indeed. The structure of the bridge, well, includes the bottom underbelly, if you will, of the bridge and the surface of the bridge on top. So you're talking about the not underwater, does not include underwater. Now let's say this is the water level. This is the pillar, and so this is the bridge, I'd say. Let's say this piece of paper is the bridge. So let's say, so there is a thickness to it. So you are measuring from the surface of the water, is that right? I'm not an engineer, but I would say you start measuring from here. The height of building or the height of aviation, whichever is the lower. Is that what you're saying? If I understand Ms. Chan correctly, she's saying that, just for argument's sake, there's someone passing by boat on the surface of the water, and inadvertently they get into the closed area. How do you handle that? Thank you very much for the question, Ms. Chan. I mean, the concept, or in practical terms, it is exactly as what we have in Shenzhen Bay. This is not new, as mentioned. But will there be new scenarios? That's what you're asking. In delineating the closed area, we have talked to the police department, the civil aviation department, and that is why it becomes so complicated. We have to take into account the low-flying planes as well. In enforcement, in fact, the police had already made an assessment, and that is for enforcement. This is what's needed. And the Shenzhen Bay experience is taken into account as well. So the actual, realistic scenario have been included in the consideration. And also we have to think of a factor, and that is, while we are delineating the closed area for convenience of administration, that is fine, but at the same time we must not include what should not be included as area inside the closed area. Let's say I would not include other parts of Lantau, for instance, because we have to be cautious. We cannot include areas which are not necessary in its inclusion, or people who should not be included. Water service would not be included because there will be boats traveling by. Even in the daytime, there will be boats traveling by. And so this is strictly for enforcement need only. Now, as for IIs, illegal immigrants, etc., as Ms. Chan had pointed out, now through the public security ordinance, and demarcating the closed area, that's one measure, but it is not the only measure in combating illegal immigration. And as Ms. Chan had pointed out, the person will have to come into the port area of Hong Kong, and there we would be able to catch him. And for IIs, basically we do not combat that in chief by this measure. There are other immigration ordinance, other enforcement actions on the part of the police. So this is just one of the measures for enforcement and security around the port area. So I think we have included all practical and realistic conditions. Yes, I was rather surreal. I've been going to the movies too much. Now, concerning the service of the bridge or the line of aviation, so basically it's like a sandwich. At the bottom is the sea and the boats that pass by, and on top would be the airlines, the planes flying by, and in between you have the buildings. That is correct. All right, there is a Hong Kong Link Road. According to my understanding, I do not know whether I have misunderstood. I'm taking this opportunity here to ask a question. This Hong Kong Link is still part of the Hong Kong territory, is that right? Correct. So this Hong Kong Link Road is part of the closed area. Now, if there's any emergency, your enforcement authority will take action in this area. Correct? Correct. Thank you.
Let's see if members have any other questions to ask. That is in relation to the clause by clause of this one. I have some questions to ask, writing on what Ms. Tanya Chan has said. I fully understand you talk about you don't want to catch planes, and I reckon that planes will be quite high. What about helicopters or those aircraft that are flying low? There won't be any problem, right? There shouldn't be any problems because we have used the suggestion of the Civil Aviation Department, that is the maximum height of the structure. The CAD has already taken into consideration the height of airplanes, so helicopters will not fly as low as that. I understand. Any other questions from members in relation to this part? I see some coloring in the diagram. You will find that in the annex of the different colors. Any other questions? If not, we will now move to LN 163. It is the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, Hong Kong Port and Hong Kong Link Road closed area, permission to enter notice. I now defer to the administration. Yes, this is the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, Hong Kong Port and Hong Kong Link Road closed area, permission to enter notice. This is in relation to the closed area, because after designation of the closed area, the Commissioner will, under Section 38A of the Public Order Ordinance, make the notice. It's a one-off permission for passengers and vehicles to enter and exit the closed area without having to make prior application. Otherwise, these people and vehicles will have to make applications to enter the closed area every single time. Commencement, just like the other three sublegs, it comes into operation on a day appointed by the Secretary for Security by notice published in the Gazette, which is also the commissioning date of the bridge. Interpretation. Well, for this permission to enter notice, there are references made to the closed area order. Clause 3 is the schedule, which sets out who can enter the closed area under the one-off permission. I'll just give you a general idea. There are two groups of people, cross-boundary drivers and passengers. We have categorized them into different groups in the interpretation. Part 2 of the schedule, permission to enter. Items 1 and 2 refers to drivers of cross-boundary vehicles. First one, driver of road vehicle to the mainland or Macau leaving Hong Kong, and the other one is the other way around, that is coming back to Hong Kong. 3, 4, 5 refer to passengers, that is those leaving Hong Kong to go to mainland China or Macau, and those who are coming back to Hong Kong. So we allow passengers and drivers who cross the border to enter the closed area on a one-off permission. Well, some passengers may have a ticket to cross the border. However, they hover and they linger in the closed area for some time, or they may even cause disturbance under the public order ordinance. So there are conditions set out. That is, these cross-boundary passengers and drivers will have to be genuine ones. Two major conditions here. First, passengers and drivers cannot stay in the closed area without undue delay. Say, for example, someone who engage in parallel goods trading. The second one is that, they may not leave the vehicle. Say, for example, if you're in a private car, then you will have to stay in the private car when you cross the border. You can't alight and wander around in the closed area. And of course, we need to give us a little bit of leeway, because some vehicles, say for example coaches, may require their passengers to alight to go through immigration clearance. Say for example those coaches that start from Wan Chai. Well, passengers will have to alight, go to the passenger clearance building, and then go back to the coaches. So we have to cater for these situations. So in the gist, passengers and drivers may not leave the vehicle. Say for example, passengers and drivers in a pickup and drop-off area of coach areas, and they have to do so without undue delay. And it is similar to the practice adopted in existing border control points. I see that it says that those who are given permission to enter or leave, the conditions 3. Passengers may not leave the proximity or closed area of may leave the immediate vicinity of the vehicle. Does it mean that they can alight and maybe stay near the vehicle? Well, you can't leave a reasonable area within the vehicle. So can you alight, or can you maybe take a step or two away from the vehicle? I think when it comes to law enforcement, that depends on the actual situation. The whole situation will be taken into account. The intent of leaving the vehicle, say for example, just to have some fresh air, or there are some other purposes. It will be different if there are emergencies. Say for example an accident. That will be excluded, right? Yes, that's right. Ms. Tanya Chan? Thank you. Sorry, I would like to ask, cross-boundary, you refer to just crossing one boundary or two? Because Hong Kong links to Macau and then to mainland China. I see cross-boundary. It's from the mainland China or Macau, it says. So if someone uses the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao bridge and is from Macau, it doesn't really matter where the origin is. Maybe someone taking a plane from Portugal to go to Macau. I know why you use the word or, but technically speaking, that person, there is only one provenance, so it's Macau. So the cross boundary from the mainland of China or Macau, it says, well, we only controlled one boundary. Whatever happens afterwards is not for us to deal with. It's not like Shenzhen Bay or other boundary control point. You go to one other place, that's it. So if Hong Kong links with Macau, then why would there be a reference to mainland of China? Do we have to deal with more than necessary? So there is only one place you cross the border to Macau. So why is mainland of China included? Thank you. Well, first I will explain about the actual operation, and then I will explain about the operation of the law. Yes, on the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao bridge, if once you have left the Hong Kong Link Road, you cross the boundary, that will be the waters of Zhuhai. So the bridge will reach Zhuhai. And as to why, we will say to and from the mainland of China or Macau. And I think, however it is worded, it will achieve the same purpose. That means you leave Hong Kong or you enter Hong Kong. Because if you travel along Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao bridge, you will be either going to Macau or mainland China. So there is very little difference. But if it's worded this way, we will be able to cover both entry and departure to Macau and mainland China. I will defer to the Department of Justice. Well, the closed area Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, Hong Kong Port and Hong Kong Link Road order schedule, and is cross-boundary refers to traveling to or from the mainland of China or Macau. Zhuhai waters is within the area of mainland China. As far as I understand, passengers using the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge will be going to Macau or other cities on the mainland. So the way it is drafted is wide enough to cover people going to other cities on the mainland or Macau. I'm looking at the alignment. I now understand that once you've left Hong Kong, it's Zhuhai waters. I'll have to ask Google. Let's see if other members have questions to ask. I would like to take the opportunity to ask this question. The Hong Kong Link Road is within Hong Kong, and I've asked, should there be any emergencies, Hong Kong will provide support and rescue. Once you have left Hong Kong Link Road, you said is Zhuhai waters. And should something happens, it would be the mainland government to provide rescue and support. That's in theory what will happen. Is that right? Yes. The concept of enforcement will be territorial. In short, different sides will be responsible for their own area. That is the principle of that is the territorial principle. If something happens within Hong Kong, it will be dealt with by Hong Kong authorities. Zhuhai waters, it will be by mainland authorities. That is a general principle. Should a major incident or accident happen involving fatalities, then the principle will be priority. Well, that is who will get there first.
That's exactly my question. I'm so glad you've answered it. And that is where there are situations where it has exceeded our boundary, but it's not too far from the boundary. And you said that the rescue would bring the injured back to the Hong Kong hospital for treatment, even though it's already in Zhuhai waters, but you may still send your rescue team into Zhuhai waters to do the rescue because rescue comes first. Indeed. All right, Mr. Chair, now I understand perfectly because now I see the alignment of the bridge. I totally understand. One leads to Zhuhai, the other leads to Macau. I'm totally clear now because I now can see the alignment of the bridge. Anything else, members, concerning this part? If not, if there are no further questions, members, let us take a look here. Perhaps our legal advisor will have certain questions? No? None? All right. None. Well, for our clause-by-clause examination, I think we have successfully completed that as well. So, one thing to note, I just want to consult everyone concerning this subsidiary legislation. Do you think we need to invite for public views, please? If you think that's necessary, we will do that. But if you think that what we've done today at this meeting is already quite thorough, then we do not have to invite for views. I put this to you. If you think this is not a problem, then we do not need to invite public views. All right? That being the case, the clause-by-clause examination is completed at this meeting today, and I just want to confirm. Mr. Wong Ting Kwang? Yes. I just have a question for the Secretariat. This Friday, is it are we in time for House Committee reporting to House Committee this Friday? Mr. Wong, in response to your question, if we have completed the examination, then Chairman and members can consider reporting verbally to the House Committee followed by a written report. Well, because we do not have any proposed amendments from this committee, whether from the members or we have no amendments basically to propose, so then it becomes very straightforward. If we have a verbal report to the House Committee on Friday, then we can do this speedily because things are really piling up. Well, the Secretariat will have to work doubly hard. Thank you. Yes, if we can make Friday, then we do not have to extend the deadline. Yes, indeed. We are very efficient in completing the examination. Then perhaps this Friday, we will make a verbal report to the House Committee. Then we do not have to extend the period of scrutiny. Very good. Then we don't need another meeting because it's all been done. Thank you very much, members, for coming to the meeting, and we thank the government's representatives as well. End of meeting. Thank you.